Chinwe was the kind of woman everyone envied. Only 29 years old, yet she lived a life many could only dream of. Her beauty was radiant like the morning sun, her skin glowed, her smile captured attention everywhere she went. And her wealth seemed endless. She owned boutiques, salons, and even an event hall. Her garage had cars that sparkled like jewels, and her wardrobe was so full she often forgot what she had inside. But Chinwe was also known for one thing: she loved to give away her old clothes. Every month she would call her driver to pack bags of dresses, shoes, and handbags that she no longer wanted. Then she would drive herself into a nearby poor neighborhood where children and mothers always gathered with excitement whenever they saw her car approaching. They would cheer and clap and rush forward, and Chinwe, dressed in her finest, would step out smiling, her perfume filling the air as she handed out clothes. To everyone watching, she was a saint, a generous young woman with a heart of gold. People called her benefactor, people prayed blessings upon her head, yet in her heart Chinwe also felt proud of herself. She would drive back to her mansion thinking she had truly changed lives. One hot afternoon, as the sun blazed high above the rooftops, Chinwe arrived in the neighborhood as usual, her car polished, her hair laid perfectly, her jewelry glittering. The people came running, clapping and singing her praises. She opened the trunk and began pulling out bags of clothes, gowns she had worn once, shoes she considered old, handbags that were no longer in fashion. And that day one young woman stepped forward. Her name was Oni, barely 22 years old, slim, quiet, her eyes deep and watchful. She did not push or shout like the others. She simply stood at the edge, waiting until Chinwe noticed her. Chinwe smiled warmly, perhaps out of instinct, and called her closer. "My dear, take this. These clothes will suit you," she said, handing her a large bag. Oni bowed her head politely and whispered in a low soft voice, "Thank you, Auntie. May you never lack. May your beauty never fade. May your wealth never run dry." Chinwe's heart swelled with pride. She nodded, feeling good about herself as the crowd cheered, and then she drove away satisfied, thinking she had once again blessed someone in need. But what Chinwe did not know was that Oni was not who she seemed. Beneath her quiet smile was a darkness no one could imagine, because Oni was part of a secret coven, a gathering of witches who fed on the glory of others. And every bag of clothes she received was never worn. Instead, she carried them to a hidden place where shadows gathered at night. That very evening, after leaving Chinwe, Oni walked quickly down a narrow path at the edge of the neighborhood. The sky was dim, the air heavy. She entered the forest where tall trees stood like guards. Deep inside was a clearing where the coven waited. Women dressed in black, their eyes glowing strangely in the firelight, their voices low and heavy as they chanted. Oni dropped Chinwe's bag in the center of the circle, and the leader, an old witch with gray hair, reached in and pulled out one of Chinwe's gowns. "Again she gives," the witch hissed. "Again she offers her spirit. Foolish rich girl, thinking she is helping the poor, but little does she know she is helping us drain her glory." The women laughed harshly. They began to chant, lifting the clothes high, weaving them in the smoke of the fire, calling Chinwe's name again and again, binding her beauty, binding her success, drawing her star into their circle. And while Chinwe slept peacefully in her mansion that night, believing she had done good, her destiny was already being tied in a place of darkness. At first Chinwe noticed nothing unusual. Her life went on as normal. Her boutiques were busy, her friends admired her new cars, and she still received invitations to the biggest events in the city. Yet slowly, like smoke curling under a door, the change began, so subtle she did not see it coming. One morning she woke up with a strange weakness in her body. She looked into the mirror and frowned. Her face seemed dull, her eyes heavy. She dismissed it as stress and continued her day, but as the weeks passed the weakness returned. Her once glowing skin grew pale, and no matter how many spot treatments she booked, the radiance never lasted. Then came the business troubles. A contract she was sure she had won was suddenly given to a competitor. Her bank reported errors in her account. Money seemed to vanish without explanation. Her workers grew lazy. Her shops were quiet. She began losing customers who once swore by her name. Chinwe brushed it off as temporary misfortune, but deep down unease stirred in her. Her cars too began to fail. One broke down on the highway, another refused to start. Repairs drained her money, and each time she sat behind the wheel she felt as if unseen eyes were watching her, shadows lurking where none should be. At night her dreams grew darker. She would see herself in strange places, standing naked in a circle of fire, women in black laughing at her, chanting, pulling her name from the air. She would wake up screaming, drenched in sweat, her heart racing. But by morning she forced a smile and told herself it was only a dream. Yet the more she gave, the worse things became. Each time she carried another bag of clothes to the poor neighborhood, Oni would be there, quiet, waiting, accepting them with that same sharp smile and the same soft whisper, "Thank you, Auntie. May you never lack." But instead of blessings, Chinwe felt more drained. Her health weakened, her wealth shrank, her peace vanished. Her friends noticed the change. Gossip spread like wildfire. People who once praised her beauty now whispered, "Have you seen Chinwe lately? She looks tired, she looks older. Perhaps her money is finishing." Some even said she must have offended the gods, because how could one so radiant fade so quickly? Desperate, Chinwe went to doctors. She ran tests. Every result came back normal. No sickness, no disease, yet her body weakened daily, her bones ached, her head pounded, and her laughter disappeared. One evening as she sat outside her mansion staring blankly at the stars, an old woman from her neighborhood passed by. She stopped and studied Chinwe carefully, her eyes full of pity. Then she said softly, "My daughter, be careful who you give your clothes to, for clothes carry more than fabric. They carry sweat, they carry spirit, they carry destiny. When you give without care, you may be giving away your own star." Chinwe's heart skipped. Her mind flashed to Oni, that quiet girl with sharp eyes who always took her biggest bags. Suddenly her chest grew heavy. Could it be possible? Could her charity be the very reason behind her suffering? That night she had the most terrifying dream yet. She saw Oni clearly, standing in the center of a fire circle, holding her golden gown high. Witches surrounded her chanting, "Her beauty is ours, her wealth is ours, her destiny is ours." They laughed, they danced, they pulled her garments into the flames, and in the dream Chinwe felt her own strength leaving her body. She woke with a loud scream, tears pouring down her face, her sheets drenched, her heart pounding, and in that moment she knew this was no ordinary dream, this was revelation, the truth she had ignored for too long. Chinwe tried to find Oni the next day. She returned to the neighborhood, her car dusty, her eyes weary, but Oni was nowhere to be found. Some said she had traveled, others said she disappeared into the forest. Nobody really knew. But in Chinwe's heart she understood, her enemy was not gone, her enemy was hiding, walking from the shadows. From that day her fear deepened. She began to dread nightfall. She avoided mirrors, she avoided parties, she shut herself inside her mansion, because everywhere she turned she felt surrounded by whispers, unseen voices calling her name. Chinwe could no longer deny it. Her life was slipping like water through her hands, and she knew it was not ordinary. Something unseen was draining her, something far darker than she had ever imagined. She turned to her friends for advice, but most of them laughed it off, saying she only needed rest. Others whispered that maybe she had been cursed by jealous competitors, but none could offer real help. She grew frustrated, sleepless, and desperate. One night she heard footsteps in her mansion, soft but heavy, echoing in the hallway. She rushed out of her room and found no one, but the chandelier above her swayed though the air was still. Shadows flickered across the walls though the lights did not dim. She felt her skin crawl, her breath quicken, and a voice whispered her name so close to her ear she almost fainted. "Chinwe." She screamed, but there was no one there. The next morning she visited a well-known prophet, a man whose prayers were said to break chains. After listening carefully to her story he shook his head gravely. "My daughter, your dreams are not just dreams, they are battles in the spirit. The girl you give your clothes to is a carrier of darkness. Through those clothes they have tied your destiny to their coven, they are feeding on your glory." Tears rolled down Chinwe's face. "But I was only helping," she whispered. "I thought I was doing good." The prophet looked at her with compassion. "Charity without wisdom is dangerous. Not every hand stretched out in need is innocent. Some hands are traps." He instructed her to begin prayers, fasting, and spiritual cleansing. For 7 nights she was to remain in his prayer house, calling on God to break the chains that bound her. Chinwe obeyed. Though her body was weak she gathered strength. She stayed in the prayer house, crying, weeping, fasting, her voice hoarse from calling for mercy. Each night she felt the weight of darkness pressing harder. The witches were aware she was fighting back, and they fought too. On the 3rd night she had a vision. She saw herself standing in a great hall, her clothes scattered across the floor. Oni stood at the far end holding one of her gowns, her eyes blazing red. Around her the coven chanted, their voices thundering, their feet stomping, their hands lifting her dresses like trophies. Each time they shouted her name she felt her chest tighten, her body weakening, her knees buckling. But then in the vision a light broke through the roof of the hall, a bright flame that no darkness could resist. The witches shrieked, their chants faltered, and Oni dropped the gown in shock. Chinwe woke from the vision drenched in sweat, her heart racing, but a small spark of hope flickered inside her. Maybe, just maybe, victory was possible. On the 5th night the attacks grew stronger. She felt invisible hands pressing on her chest as she tried to sleep. She heard drums beating in her ears, shadows dancing at the corners of the room, but she refused to give up. She clutched her Bible to her chest, tears pouring, her voice shaking as she prayed louder, refusing to surrender. By the 7th night the prophet declared, "Tonight is the night of your deliverance. Tonight heaven will fight for you." Chinwe knelt on the floor, her body trembling, her voice rising in prayer, and suddenly she was caught up in a deep vision, clearer than any dream she had ever seen before. She stood once again in the witch's coven, fire circling her, her clothes piled high in the center, the witches chanting louder than ever, Oni at the front holding her golden gown with a wicked smile. Her beauty is ours. Her wealth is ours. Her destiny is ours. Chinwe felt her strength leaving, her knees trembling, but then she shouted with all her might, "No more, I take back what is mine. My destiny is not yours. My glory is not yours." And suddenly the fire around the coven turned white, blazing like lightning. The witches screamed in terror, their circle shattered, their chants broken. Oni dropped the gown and fell backward, crying out in fear. The clothes that once bound Chinwe burst into flames of light, consumed by fire that no darkness could withstand. Chinwe woke with a loud cry, her whole body shaking, but this time it was not weakness she felt, it was release. Her chest was light, her face glowed, tears of relief streamed down her cheeks. She knew the chains had broken. From that night Chinwe knew something had shifted. The heaviness that had pressed her down for months was gone, her body felt lighter, her skin began to glow again, her laughter slowly returned, and even her workers noticed the change. They whispered to each other, "Madam is shining again, something has happened." Her businesses picked up speed, customers returned in numbers, old contracts that had been blocked suddenly reopened, invitations poured in once more, money began to flow again like a river, but this time Chinwe no longer took it for granted. She knew what it meant to almost lose everything. She knew how fragile life could be when your destiny is tampered with. But though her life was being restored, she could not forget Oni, the girl who had stood so quietly in the crowd with sharp eyes, always smiling, always whispering blessings that were in truth curses. Chinwe still felt anger when she remembered her face, and part of her longed for answers. Weeks later word reached her that Oni had returned to the neighborhood, no longer the quiet slim girl she once was, but a shadow of herself. Her skin had darkened, her eyes sunken, her voice hoarse. Some said she had been struck by madness, wandering at night, laughing alone, screaming names no one understood. Others swore they saw her running into the forest barefoot, chased by shadows only she could see. Chinwe realized that the coven had been broken, the power Oni relied on had collapsed, and the same fire that freed her had consumed the witches. She felt no joy in the girl's downfall, only pity. Because she understood now that Oni had given herself to darkness, and the reward of darkness is always destruction. One evening Chinwe visited the neighborhood again, but this time she came differently. She did not bring old bags of clothes from her wardrobe. Instead she stopped at the market and bought brand new clothes, simple but fresh, folded neatly. She also bought food items and sandals. When she arrived the people gathered as usual, expecting the same routine, but Chinwe surprised them. She handed out the new clothes. The children's eyes shone with joy as they received shirts with tags still on them. Mothers gasped and clutched the fresh wrappers to their chests, their blessings that they were genuine, their smiles real. A little girl hugged her waist and whispered, "Thank you, Auntie. Thank you for seeing us," and those words pierced Chinwe's heart more deeply than all the praise she had ever received before. She realized then that giving was not about pride or leftovers, it was about dignity, about respect, about love. Her story spread across the city. People began to whisper, "Be careful where you give your clothes, be careful whose hands you put them in, for clothes are not just fabric, they carry spirit, they carry destiny." Chinwe herself became a teacher of this lesson. Whenever she spoke to friends, to women in her circles, to young girls who admired her life, she told them, "Charity is good, but charity without wisdom can become destruction." When you give without discernment you may be giving more than cloth, you may be giving away your very star. And so Chinwe lived wiser, more humble, more cautious. Her wealth returned, her beauty restored, but now she gave differently. She gave with care, with wisdom, and with prayer. Because she had learned the greatest lesson of her life, that not every hand stretched out for help is pure, and that when you give, you must give with discernment, because not all who smile at you carry gratitude, some carry darkness. And when you give without wisdom you may be feeding your own enemies.